The stars were quiet that night. Princess Yura sat alone in her private chamber on the diplomatic vessel, watching the endless darkness through her window. She was tired of politics, tired of smiling at people she did not like, tired of being the perfect daughter of Empress Nola. She was the third daughter, which meant she was important enough to be useful, but not important enough to matter. Her mother sent her on these missions because Yura was good at talking. She could make enemies feel like friends. But tonight, she just wanted to sleep. The ship shook. Yura grabbed the edge of her chair as alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed across the walls. She heard shouting from somewhere far away, then the sound of weapons firing. Raiders. The word entered her mind like ice. She stood up and ran toward the door. But before she could reach it, the ship shook again. This time the floor cracked beneath her feet. Fire burst from the walls. She fell hard, her head hitting something metal, and the world went dark. When she opened her eyes, everything was wrong. The ship was broken. Smoke filled the air so thick she could barely breathe. Her silver skin was burned in several places, and her left leg would not move properly. She tried to stand but fell back down. She could hear footsteps, heavy boots on metal, not her guards. Her guards wore soft shoes. 3 figures appeared through the smoke. They were Keth raiders, ugly creatures with gray skin and too many teeth. They wore dirty armor and carried weapons that still smoked from recent kills. One of them saw her and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Look at this," he said to the others. "A Valanthi noble. She will sell for a good price." Yura tried to crawl backward, but there was nowhere to go. The wall was behind her. She was trapped. The raider reached for her. Then his head exploded. Yura screamed. Blood and bones sprayed across the floor. The other 2 raiders turned around, raising their weapons, but they were too slow. 2 more shots rang out, and they both fell dead. Through the smoke, a new figure emerged. He was not Keth. He was not Valanthi either. He was shorter than her people, with brown skin and black hair, and dark eyes that reflected the fire around them. He held a weapon in each hand, both still smoking. A human. Yura had heard of humans. Her people called them scavengers, opportunists. They crawled through the broken parts of the galaxy, taking what they could find and selling it to whoever paid the most. They were not to be trusted. The human looked at her. His face showed no expression. He put his weapons away and walked toward her. "Can you stand?" he asked. His voice was rough, like he had not spoken in days. "Stay away from me," Yura said. Her voice was weaker than she wanted it to be. "You are injured. The ship is on fire. If you stay here, you die." He spoke like he was explaining something simple to a child. "I have a ship. I can take you somewhere safe." "Why would you help me?" The human tilted his head slightly. "Because you are dying. Is that not enough reason?" Yura did not know how to answer. In her world, no one did anything without expecting something in return. Power, money, influence. Everyone wanted something. The human did not wait for her answer. He bent down and lifted her from the floor. She was taller than him, but he carried her weight like it was nothing. He began walking through the burning ship, stepping over bodies and broken metal. "My name is Kang Do-yun," he said without looking at her. "You do not need to tell me yours." She told him anyway. She did not know why. "Yura, Princess Yura of the Valanthi Empire." Do-yun made a small sound. It might have been a laugh. "A princess. Of course." They reached a hole in the side of the ship. Through it, Yura could see a smaller vessel attached to the wreckage. It was old and ugly and covered in patches. It looked like it might fall apart at any moment. "That is your ship?" she asked. "She flies. That is what matters." He carried her through the hole and into his vessel. Inside, it was cramped and dark and smelled like oil and metal. But it was not on fire, and that made it beautiful to her. Do-yun set her down on a small bed in the corner of the main room. He opened a box and began pulling out medical supplies. Without asking permission, he began treating her wounds. His hands were rough but careful. "You have burn," he said. "Some broken bones in your leg. Nothing that will kill you if we treat it now." Yura watched him work. His face was covered in small scars. Old ones. His hands had scars too. This was a man who had been hurt many times and kept going. "The raiders," she said. "How did you know they were there?" I did not. I came because of the distress signal. When I saw the Keth ships, I knew what was happening. You came alone? Against raiders? Yes. That is foolish. Do-yun looked at her. For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. It might have been amusement. Humans are often foolish. We are also very hard to kill. He finished wrapping her leg and stood up. He walked to the front of the ship and began pressing buttons. The vessel shook as it detached from the wreckage. Where are we going? Yer asked. Where do you want to go? She thought about it. Home. She wanted to go home. But home was far away, on the other side of the galaxy. This tiny ship could not possibly make that journey. Valanthe space, she said. Can you take me there? Do-yun was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. It will take time. 3 weeks, maybe more. My ship is not fast. I can pay you. When we arrive, my mother will give you whatever you want. Do-yun did not answer right away. He finished setting the course and then turned to look at her. I do not want payment, he said. I saw someone who needed help. I helped. That is all. Yura did not understand. She had lived her entire life among people who calculated every action, every word, every kindness. Nothing was free. Everything had a price. But this human asked for nothing. She watched him as he walked back to check her bandages. His movements were efficient. No wasted motion. He had done this before. Helped people. Saved them. Maybe that was just what humans did. Or maybe this one was different. She did not know yet. But she had 3 weeks to find out. Outside the window, the stars began to move as the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the burning wreckage of her diplomatic vessel faded into darkness. Yura closed her eyes. For the first time since the attack, she felt safe. 5 days passed on the small ship. Yura spent most of that time watching Kang Do-yun. He was a strange creature. He woke up before she did and went to sleep after her. He ate very little, just small portions of dried food that looked tasteless and gray. He drank water and sometimes a bitter black liquid he called coffee. When she asked about it, he said it helped him stay awake. Why do you need to stay awake so much? She asked. Habit, he said. In war, sleeping too much gets you killed. She wanted to ask more about the war, but something in his eyes told her not to. Not yet. He spent hours each day maintaining his ship. He would crawl into small spaces to fix wires or clean filters or replace broken parts. The ship was old, she realized. Very old. It should not still be flying. But Do-yun kept it alive through constant work. He also cleaned his weapons every day. He had many of them. Guns of different sizes, knives, something that looked like a small explosive. He took each one apart, cleaned every piece, and put it back together. His hands moved automatically, like he had done this 1,000 times. You were a soldier, Yura said one evening. It was not a question. Do-yun nodded. A pilot in Earth's colonial war. I have heard of Earth, your homeworld. It was. Not anymore. He did not look at her as he spoke. His eyes stayed on the weapon in his hands. The war destroyed most of it. What was left was not worth staying for. So you left. So I left. Yura wanted to ask what that felt like, leaving your home forever. But she had never lost anything. She had always had her palace, her family, her empire. She did not know how to understand his loss. On the 7th day, trouble found them. Yura was sleeping when the alarms woke her. She sat up quickly, her heart beating fast. Through the window, she saw lights in the darkness. Ships, 4 of them. Do-yun was already at the controls. His face was calm, but his movements were faster than usual. Keth? She asked. Yes, they tracked us. He pressed several buttons. They want you back. A princess is worth a lot of money. Can we run? No, they are faster. He stood up and grabbed one of his guns. Stay here. Do not leave this room. What are you going to do? He looked at her. His dark eyes were empty of fear. What I do best. He left through a door she had not noticed before. An airlock. She heard the hiss of it opening and closing. Through the window she watched. Do-yun had put on a suit for space. He floated out of the ship and toward the enemy vessels. They were much bigger than his little craft. Each one carried at least 10 raiders. That meant 40 enemies against 1 human. The raiders saw him coming. They must have thought it was funny. 1 small human floating toward them with a gun. Some of them came out to meet him, also in spacesuits, laughing through their communicators. They stopped laughing very quickly. Doyun moved like nothing Yura had ever seen. He was not fast like Volanthi warriors, who were graceful and elegant. He was something else. Brutal. Efficient. He did not waste a single movement. The first raider died before he could raise his weapon. The second and third died together, one shot each. The fourth tried to run, but Doyun caught him and broke his neck with his bare hands. More raiders came. 5, 10, 15. Doyun kept killing them. He took wounds. Yura saw blood floating away from his body in the zero gravity. A shot hit his shoulder. Another grazed his helmet. He did not stop. He did not slow down. Yura pressed her hands against the window. She had seen warriors fight before. Volanthi soldiers were the best in the galaxy. They were strong and fast and trained from birth, but they had never fought like this. Doyun fought like someone who did not care if he lived or died. No, that was not right. He fought like someone who had decided he would not die, and the universe would simply have to accept that decision. The last raider fell. Doyun floated among the bodies for a moment, checking to make sure they were all dead. Then he turned and came back to the ship. When the airlock opened, he collapsed. Yura ran to him. Blood was everywhere. His suit had holes in it. She did not know how he was still breathing. "Help me up," he said. His voice was weak but steady. "You need medical attention. You need... Help me up." She helped him up. He walked to the medical supplies, leaving a trail of blood behind him. He sat down and began treating his own wounds. His hands were shaking, but they did not stop moving. Yura watched in horror and amazement. He pulled a piece of metal out of his shoulder without making a sound. He stitched a cut on his arm without any pain medication. He wrapped bandages around his chest where 3 ribs were clearly broken. "How are you still alive?" she asked. Her voice was a whisper. Doyun finished wrapping his bandages. He looked at her with those dark, tired eyes. "Stubbornness," he said. "It is a human specialty." She did not know what to say. She had grown up believing humans were weak. Her teachers said they were fragile creatures who died easily. They had short lives. They broke under pressure. But this man had just killed 20 raiders alone while injured. He was treating wounds that should have killed him, and he was speaking to her calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. "You should rest," she said finally. "I will rest when we reach Volanthi space. That is 2 more weeks away. Then I will rest in 2 weeks." He stood up, walked to the pilot chair and sat down. Within minutes, he was checking the ship's systems, making sure nothing was damaged. Yura watched him for a long time. She thought about what she knew of humans. They came from a small planet around an ordinary star. They had no special abilities. They were not strong like the Keth, or fast like her people, or smart like the engineers of the Oran system. They had nothing except their stubbornness, and apparently that was enough. She walked over to him and sat in the chair next to his. He looked at her, but did not speak. "Thank you," she said, "for saving me. Again." Doyun nodded. "You are welcome." They sat together in silence as the stars passed by outside. Yura realized she was not afraid anymore. Not of the raiders, not of the journey. She looked at the human beside her, broken and bleeding and still working, and she understood something important. She was safe, not because of his strength or his weapons or his ship. She was safe because he had decided she would be. And humans, she was beginning to learn, did not change their minds easily. The days began to blur together. Yura lost track of time. There was only the small ship, the endless stars, and Kang Do-yun. His wounds healed slowly. Humans, she learned, did not regenerate like her people did. They had to wait for their bodies to fix themselves the old way, cell by cell. It was a painful process. She could see it in the way he moved, careful and stiff, always hiding how much he hurt. But he never complained, not once. On the 10th day, Yura started talking. She did not plan to. The words just came out. She told him about her home, the great palace that floated above the clouds, the gardens that glowed with bioluminescent flowers, the way the 3 moons looked when they all rose together, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. She told him about her sisters. The oldest was cold and ambitious, always fighting for their mother's approval. The second was kind but weak, married off to a distant noble family, and Yira was the third, the one who did not fit anywhere. My mother does not know what to do with me, she said. I am too smart to be ignored and too unimportant to be valued. So she sends me on missions. Diplomacy, negotiations, things that matter but not too much. Doyun listened. He always listened. He did not interrupt or offer opinions. He just let her speak until she had nothing left to say. What about you? She asked finally. Do you have family? He was quiet for a long time. She thought he would not answer. I had a brother, he said. He died in the war. I am sorry. It was a long time ago. That does not make it hurt less. Doyun looked at her. Something changed in his eyes. A wall came down. Just a little. No, he said. It does not. That night, he taught her a human game. It was played with small paper rectangles that had pictures and numbers on them. He called them cards. The game was simple but required strategy and luck in equal amounts. Yira lost badly at first. Doyun beat her 7 times in a row, but she was a fast learner, and by the 10th game, she finally won. Good, Doyun said. There was something in his voice that might have been pride. I want to learn more, she said. Teach me something else, something from Earth. He thought about it. Then he began to speak. He told her about Earth's oceans. Vast bodies of water that covered most of the planet. He described how the waves looked at sunset, how the water changed color from blue to gold to red. He told her about beaches where the sand was white and soft, and about creatures that lived in the deep places where no light could reach. He told her about mountains so tall they touched the clouds, about forests where the trees grew so thick you could walk for days without seeing the sky, about a season called autumn, when the leaves changed color and fell to the ground like rain. It sounds beautiful, Yira said. It was. Do you miss it? Doyun was silent for a moment. I miss what it used to be. Before the war, before everything changed, he paused. But missing something does not bring it back. So I stopped looking backward. I only look forward now. Yira thought about that. Her people were the opposite. They looked backward constantly. Their traditions were thousands of years old. Change was feared. The past was sacred. Maybe that was why her empire was so powerful but so tired. They had forgotten how to move forward. On the 14th day, the ship broke. They were passing through a nebula, a cloud of gas and dust that made the sensors blind. Something hit them, a rock maybe, or debris from an old battle. The engine sputtered. Alarms screamed. The lights went out. Yira felt fear grip her chest. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere. No one would find them. They would drift until they ran out of air and died. But Doyun did not panic. He grabbed a light and started working. He told her what to do, his voice calm and steady. Hold this wire. Pass me that tool. Press this button when I say. They worked together for 16 hours. Yira did not know anything about engines or ships, but she followed his instructions perfectly. Her hands became black with grease. Her muscles ached from holding positions too long. But she did not stop, and neither did he. Sometime around hour 12, when they were both exhausted and close to giving up, something happened. Doyun was reaching for a part he could not quite touch. Without thinking, Yira moved beside him and held his weight so he could reach further. Their eyes met. She saw something in his face she had not seen before. Not gratitude exactly, something deeper, recognition, like he was seeing her for the first time. Thank you, he said quietly. We are partners now, she said. Partners help each other. He smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It changed his whole face. He looked younger, almost happy. They fixed the engine. The ship hummed back to life. The lights came on. They both collapsed on the floor, too tired to move. You did well, Dohyun said. I had a good teacher. They lay there in silence, side by side, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the nebula glowed in colors that had no name. I do not want this to end, Yira said. She did not know why she said it. The words just came out. Doyun turned his head to look at her. What do you mean? This, the journey. When we reach my home, you will leave. You will go back to your life, and I will go back to mine. We will never see each other again. She had not realized how much that thought hurt until she said it out loud. Do-yun was quiet for a long time. Then he reached over and took her hand. His skin was warm and rough against hers. I do not know what will happen when we arrive, he said. But I know this. You are the first person in a very long time who has made me want tomorrow to come. That means something. I do not know what yet, but it means something. Yura felt her eyes fill with tears. She did not know why she was crying. Valanthi were not supposed to cry in front of others. It was a sign of weakness. But she did not feel weak. She felt something else, something new. She held his hand tighter and closed her eyes. Outside, the stars waited. They still had 1 week left. 1 week before everything changed. The Valanthi throne world appeared on the screens like a jewel in the darkness. Yura stood at the window, her heart beating fast. Home. After 3 weeks of fear and pain and something she did not have words for, she was finally home. The planet was beautiful. White clouds swirled over blue oceans and golden continents. 3 moons hung in the sky, each one glowing softly. And above it all, floating in orbit, was the Imperial Palace, a structure so massive it could be seen from space. That is where I live, Yura said. Do-yun stood beside her. His face showed nothing, but she had learned to read him now. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands stayed close to his weapons. It is very large, he said. It has been the seat of my family's power for 3,000 years. She paused. You are not comfortable. No. Why? He looked at her. Humans are not welcome here. Your people think we are vermin. When we land, they may arrest me, or kill me. Yura felt cold fear in her stomach. She had not thought about that. On the ship, it had been easy to forget what he was, to forget that her people hated his kind. I will not let them hurt you, she said. You may not have a choice. Before she could answer, the communicator crackled. A voice spoke in the Valanthi language, harsh and demanding. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be destroyed. Yura took a deep breath. She walked to the communicator and pressed the button. This is Princess Yura, 3rd daughter of Empress Nola. I am returning home after my diplomatic vessel was attacked by Keth raiders. I survived because of the human pilot of this ship. He saved my life. He will be treated as my honored guest, or I will not return. Silence. Then the voice came back, softer now, confused. Princess Yura, we were told you were dead. Your ship was found destroyed. There were no survivors. As you can see, I survived. Now clear a path to the palace, and send word to my mother that I am coming home. Another pause, then, yes, Your Highness, welcome home. The warships that had surrounded them pulled back. A path opened toward the palace. Do-yun looked at her with something like respect in his eyes. You are different when you speak to your people, he said. I am a princess. Sometimes I have to act like one. They landed in the main hangar of the palace. It was enormous, filled with ships of every size and type. Soldiers stood in perfect lines, their silver armor gleaming. Servants waited with their heads bowed. The door of Do-hyun's ship opened. Yura stepped out first. Immediately, people rushed toward her. Servants, guards, officials, all talking at once. They surrounded her like a wave, pulling her away from the ship, asking questions she could not answer. She looked back. Do-yun stood at the entrance of his ship, alone. No one went to greet him. The soldiers looked at him with disgust in their eyes. The servants pretended he did not exist. He stood perfectly still, his face showing nothing. But Yura could see his hands. They were near his weapons. Ready. Then a new figure pushed through the crowd. He was tall, even for a Valanthi. His silver skin was marked with ritual scars that showed his rank. His eyes were cold and hard. He wore the uniform of a military commander, Prince Taivo, Yura's older brother. He walked past her without a word and stopped in front of Do-yun. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The prince was a head taller than the human, broader, stronger. Everything about his body language said that he considered Do-hyun to be beneath him. So, Taivo said, his voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. This is the creature that saved my sister. Do-hyun did not react. He did not bow. He did not look away. Yes, he said simply. You think saving one princess makes you worthy of standing here, human, in the palace of the Valanthi Empire, among your betters? The crowd was silent. Everyone watched. Do-yun met the prince's eyes. His voice was calm and quiet. "I do not think anything," he said. "I just did what needed doing." Taivo's face twisted with anger. He was not used to being spoken to like that. He was not used to being challenged by anyone, let alone a human. He stepped closer. His hand moved toward the sword at his waist. "Taivo!" Yura's voice cut through the tension. She pushed through the crowd and stood between her brother and Do-yun. "He saved my life. Without him, I would be dead or sold to slavers. Whatever you think of humans, you will treat him with respect." "Respect?" Tavo laughed. It was not a kind sound. "For this animal? Sister, I think your time among the stars has confused you. Humans are tools, useful sometimes, but never worthy of respect. Then your understanding of worth is smaller than I thought." Brother and sister stared at each other. The crowd held its breath. Finally, Taivo stepped back. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Mother will want to see you," he said. "Both of you. I am sure that meeting will be very interesting." He turned and walked away, his soldiers following behind him. Yura let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She turned to Do-hyun. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "My brother is... he is what he is." Do-hyun's voice was steady. "I have met many people like him. They do not bother me. He could make your life very difficult here. My life has always been difficult. One more enemy does not change much." Yura wanted to say something more, but the servants were approaching. They needed to prepare her for the audience with the Empress. There were rituals to follow, clothes to change, protocols to observe. She looked at Do-hyun one last time. "I will not let them hurt you," she said again. "I know." He paused. "But remember, Princess, you cannot protect me forever. At some point, I will need to prove myself. That is how these things work." She wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. The servants led her away. Do-hyun was taken by guards to a guest room, surrounded by men who watched him like he was a dangerous animal. Yura looked back at him one more time. He stood straight and calm, alone among enemies, showing no fear. She had brought him into the heart of an empire that hated his kind. Now she had to find a way to keep him alive. The throne room of the Valanthi Empire was designed to make visitors feel small. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadow. The floor was black marble that reflected light like still water. Massive pillars lined both sides of the room, each one carved with the faces of ancient emperors and empresses. And at the far end, raised on a platform of white stone, sat the throne. Empress Nola waited there. She was old for a Valanthi, nearly 300 years, but her face showed no weakness. Her silver skin was smooth and perfect. Her eyes were the color of ice. She wore robes of deep purple, the color of royalty, and a crown of crystallized starlight rested on her head. Around her stood the court, hundreds of nobles, advisors, military commanders, and officials. They filled the room like ghosts, silent and watching. Kang Do-yun walked through the middle of them alone. He had been given new clothes, simple black garments that fit well enough. They had taken his weapons, of course. He felt naked without them. But he kept his back straight and his eyes forward. The whispers followed him like shadows. "Is that the human? Look how small it is. Why is it even allowed here? Disgusting creature." Do-hyun ignored them. He had heard worse. He stopped at the base of the platform and looked up at the Empress. She looked down at him with an expression of cold curiosity, like a scientist examining an interesting insect. "So," she said, her voice filled the room without effort, "you are the human who saved my daughter." "Yes. I am told you fought off 2 attacks by Keth raiders alone, and that you traveled 3 weeks through dangerous space to bring her home." "Yes. Why?" It was the same question Yura had asked him on that first day. Do-yun gave the same answer. "Because she needed saving." The Empress's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you expected nothing in return? No reward? No payment?" "No. I find that difficult to believe. Everyone wants something." "Not everyone." A murmur ran through the court. This human was not behaving the way humans were supposed to behave. He was not begging or bargaining. He was not afraid. He spoke to the Empress of the greatest empire in the galaxy as if she were just another person. High Advisor Bora stepped forward. He was ancient, even older than the Empress, and his face was carved with lines of permanent disapproval. "Your Majesty," he said, "this is an insult. Allowing a human to stand in the throne room, to speak to you directly, it violates every tradition we hold sacred. Our ancestors would weep to see such a thing." "Our ancestors are dead," the Empress said calmly. "Their opinions are noted but not required." Bora's face tightened. "The human should be questioned and sent away, perhaps given some money for his trouble, but he has no place here. His presence pollutes this sacred space." More murmurs of agreement from the court. Doyun felt the hatred in the room like heat from a fire. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. Then the doors at the back of the throne room opened. Princess Yura walked in. She had been transformed. Her silver skin gleamed. Her hair was arranged in complex patterns that marked her royal status. She wore a gown of deep blue that trailed behind her like water. She looked like what she was, a princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. But her eyes were the same, fierce and determined. She walked through the crowd ignoring their stares and stopped beside Do-hyun. Then she turned to face her mother. "I apologize for my lateness," she said. "I wanted to be here for this moment." "You were not summoned," the Empress said. "No, but I came anyway." Yura took a breath. "Mother, I need to tell you something. Something this court needs to hear." The room went silent. Yura spoke. "This man saved my life. Not for money, not for status, not because he knew who I was. When he found me, I was dying in a burning ship. He did not ask questions. He did not calculate his advantage. He simply helped me because I was a person who needed help." She paused, looking around at the nobles and advisors. In 3 weeks of traveling with him, he asked for nothing. He expected nothing. He fought raiders twice, was wounded badly, and never once complained. When our ship broke down in a nebula, he worked for 16 hours without rest to fix it. He treated my injuries with his own medical supplies. He gave me his food when supplies ran low. Her voice grew stronger. "I have lived in this court my entire life. I have seen the games you play, the alliances and betrayals, the calculations behind every smile. Everything here has a price. Everything is a transaction." She looked at Do-hyun, then back at her mother. "But this man gave me something I have never received from anyone in this palace. Kindness without conditions. Help without expectation. That is more honor than I have seen in this court in years." The silence that followed was absolute. High Advisor Bora looked like he wanted to explode. Prince Tavo, standing near the throne, had his hand on his sword. The nobles whispered to each other, scandalized and fascinated in equal measure. The Empress studied her daughter for a long moment. Her ice-cold eyes revealed nothing. Then she spoke. "You speak strongly for this human. Do you understand what that means? If I spare him and he later betrays us, the shame falls on you." "I understand. And you still vouch for him?" "With my life." Another long pause. The Empress turned her gaze back to Do-hyun. She examined him like she was trying to see inside his soul. "Human," she said, "my daughter has made quite a case for you, but I want to hear from you directly. If I grant you safety and honor in my empire, what will you do with it?" Do-hyun thought about the question. He could feel everyone watching him, the hatred of some, the curiosity of others, and the hope in Yura's eyes. "I do not know," he said honestly. "I have never been offered anything like that before. But I can tell you this. If someone needs help, I will help them. If someone tries to hurt the people under my protection, I will stop them. That is all I know how to do. That is all I have ever done." The Empress was silent for a moment. Then slowly something changed in her face. Not warmth exactly, but something like recognition. "You are a strange creature," she said. "I have lived 3 centuries and met thousands of beings from across the galaxy. I have never met one quite like you." She stood up from her throne. "Very well. I will reserve judgment for now. The human will remain as a guest in the palace until I decide his fate. He will be treated with respect." She looked at Bora. "That is not a suggestion. That is a command." Bora bowed, his face twisted with barely hidden anger. "Yes, Your Majesty." The Empress looked at Do-hyun one last time. "Do not make me regret this, human." "I will try not to." The Empress turned and walked out of the throne room. The court began to disperse, everyone talking in hushed, excited voices. Yura let out a breath and looked at Doyun. That could have gone worse, and she said, "It could have gone better. You are still alive. You are still here. That is more than anyone expected." Doyun nodded. She was right. He had survived the first test, but he could feel the eyes still watching him. Taivo, Bora, others whose names he did not know. They were not done with him yet. The real challenges were still to come. 3 days passed in the palace. 3 days of watching and waiting. Dohyun was given a room in the guest wing. It was larger than his entire ship. The bed was too soft. The food was too rich. Everything was wrong. He spent most of his time staring out the window, looking at the stars. He missed his ship. He missed the silence of space. He missed knowing exactly where he stood. Here, in this palace of secrets and smiles, he understood nothing. Yura visited him when she could. She told him about the politics of the court, the alliances and rivalries, the dangerous people he needed to avoid. But there were many meetings and ceremonies she had to attend. They could not spend as much time together as before. Dohyun understood. She was a princess. She had duties. He was just a human who had wandered into a world where he did not belong. On the fourth day, the challenge came. He was walking in one of the smaller gardens when Prince Taivo found him. The prince was not alone. 20 soldiers followed him, their hands on their weapons. Taivo stopped in front of Dohyun. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with hatred. "Human," he said, "I have come to offer you an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" "A chance to prove your worth." Taivo smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "You have been given shelter in our palace, food, safety. These are gifts that many would kill for. And what have you offered in return?" "Nothing. I did not ask for anything." "That is true, but you received it anyway. And now people whisper that a human has been honored by the Empress, that a lesser creature has been elevated above his station. This cannot stand." Doyun waited. He knew what was coming. "I challenge you," Taivo said, "a formal duel, according to the ancient traditions of our people. If you win, you will be accepted. No one will question your place here again. If you lose," he paused, "you die." The soldiers around them shifted. Some of them were smiling. They expected this to be easy. A quick execution dressed up as entertainment. "And if I refuse," Dohyun asked, "then you will be branded a coward and expelled from the empire. You will never see my sister again. And everyone will know that humans are exactly what we always believed. Weak, pathetic creatures who run from any real fight." Doyun thought about it. He could refuse. He could leave. Go back to his ship, back to the empty spaces between stars. It would be safer, smarter, the logical choice. But he thought about Yura, about the way she had stood up for him in the throne room, about the hope in her eyes when she looked at him. If he ran, he would prove everything they believed about humans. He would confirm their hatred, and he would never see her again. "When?" he said. Taivo's smile widened. "Tomorrow, at sunset, in the ancient arena." He turned and walked away, his soldiers following. Their laughter echoed through the garden. That night, Yura came to his room. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She had heard about the challenge. "You cannot do this," she said. "Taivo is the greatest warrior in the empire. He has trained his entire life. He has never lost a duel. Never." "I know." "Then why did you accept?" Doyun looked at her. "Because if I refused, everything you said in the throne room would mean nothing. They would say you defended a coward. They would use it against you, against your mother. I will not let that happen. I do not care about politics. I care about you being alive. And I care about you. That is why I have to do this." Yura stared at him. Tears formed in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. "You could die tomorrow." "I could. But I have almost died many times. I am still here." He reached out and took her hand. Her silver skin was cool against his. "I am not doing this to prove I am better than them," he said quietly. "I am doing this because you believed in me when no one else did. You saw me as a person, not a creature. That matters. That is worth fighting for." Yura said nothing. She just held his hand tighter. The next evening, the ancient arena was filled to capacity. Thousands of Valanthi had come to watch, nobles and commoners alike, all eager to see the human die. They sat in the stone seats that rose in circles around the fighting floor. Torches burned along the walls, casting everything in flickering orange light. Empress Nola sat in the royal box, her face unreadable. Yera sat beside her, looking like she might be sick. Doyun entered from the east gate. He wore simple fighting clothes and carried a single sword. It was a Valanthi blade, lighter than he was used to, but it would have to do. The crowd booed when they saw him. Insults rained down. Garbage was thrown. He ignored all of it. Prince Tyvo entered from the west gate. He was magnificent. His armor gleamed. His sword was ancient and famous, passed down through generations of warriors. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. They met in the center of the arena. An official spoke the ritual words, explained the rules, a duel to yield or death. No outside interference. The gods would judge who was worthy. Do-hyun did not believe in gods. He believed in survival. The official stepped back. The duel began. Tyvo attacked first. He was fast. Faster than anything Do-hyun had ever seen. The sword came at him like lightning, striking at his head, his chest, his legs. Do-hyun blocked what he could and dodged the rest. But he could not dodge everything. Within the first minute, Tyvo cut him 3 times, once across the arm, once across the chest, once across the face. Blood ran down Do-hyun's body and dripped onto the sand. The crowd cheered. Tyvo smiled and attacked again. More cuts, more blood. Do-hyun fell to one knee, his sword barely keeping the prince's blade from his throat. "This is what humans are," Tyvo announced to the crowd. "Weak, fragile, unable to stand against a true warrior." He kicked Do-hyun in the chest. The human flew backward and landed hard in the sand. "Yield," Tyvo said. "Yield and I might let you live." Do-hyun coughed. Blood came out. Something was broken inside him. Probably several things. He looked up at the royal box. He found Yera's face in the crowd. She was crying now, tears running down her silver cheeks. He thought about giving up. Then he stood. The crowd went silent. Do-hyun raised his sword. His arm was shaking. His vision was blurred, but he was standing. "No," he said. Tyvo's face twisted with confusion and anger. "You can barely hold your weapon. You cannot win." "Maybe not." Do-hyun took a breath. "But I do not know how to give up. I never learned." He attacked. It was not elegant. It was not beautiful. It was desperate and ugly and brutal. But it was relentless. Tyvo blocked easily at first, then less easily, then with visible effort, because Do-hyun would not stop. Every time Tyvo cut him, he kept coming. Every time Tyvo knocked him down, he stood up again. Every time it seemed like the fight was over, the human was somehow still there, still swinging, still fighting. The crowd fell silent. They had never seen anything like this. This was not how fights worked. When you were beaten, you fell. When you were broken, you stopped. But this human did not stop. Tyvo was growing tired. His movements slowed. His confidence cracked. For the first time in his life, he was facing something he did not understand. Fear. It happened in a single moment. Tyvo swung too wide. His foot slipped in the blood-soaked sand. His balance was off for just 1 second. Do-hyun moved. His blade came up under Tyvo's guard and stopped at his throat. One push, and the prince would die. The arena was absolutely silent. Do-hyun stood there, bleeding from a dozen wounds, swaying on his feet, with his sword at the throat of the greatest warrior in the Valanthi Empire. And then he stepped back. "I did not come here to prove humans are better," he said. His voice was hoarse but clear. "I came here because your sister asked me to. That is all." He dropped his sword and collapsed. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was the sound of Yera screaming his name. For a moment he did not know where he was. Everything hurt. His chest, his arms, his face. Even breathing was painful. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. "Do not try to get up." Yera's voice came from somewhere nearby. "You almost died. The healers said you should have died. Your wounds were—" She stopped. When she spoke again, her voice was shaking. "I thought I lost you." Do-hyun turned his head slowly. She was sitting beside the bed, her silver face marked with exhaustion. She looked like she had not slept in days. "How long?" he asked. His throat was dry. "5 days. You have been unconscious for 5 days." She reached out and touched his hand. "The healers used all their skills to save you. They said your body is unlike anything they have seen. You should have died from blood loss alone, but your heart just kept beating. It refused to stop." Doyun tried to smile. It hurt. "I told you, humans are stubborn." Yira laughed. It was a wet sound mixed with tears. "Yes, you did tell me." She helped him drink some water. Then she told him what had happened. After he collapsed, chaos had erupted in the arena. Some had called for his death. Others had demanded he be honored. Prince Taivo had stood in silence, staring at the human who had beaten him. The Empress had made the final decision. "She declared you a friend of the throne," Yira said. "It is the highest honor a non-Valanthi can receive. It has never been given before. Not in 3,000 years. Why? Because you showed mercy when you did not have to. You defeated Taivo and let him live. In our culture, that is the mark of true strength. Not the ability to kill, but the choice not to." Doyun thought about that. He had not really made a choice. He had just been too tired to care about winning. But if they wanted to call it honor, he would not argue. "And Taivo?" he asked. Yira's face became complicated. "He came here while you were sleeping. He did not say anything. He just stood at the door and watched you for a long time. Then he left. He hates me. Maybe. But he also respects you now. For a Valanthi warrior, those two things are not so different." Over the following weeks, Doyun recovered slowly. His human body was not designed for the kind of damage it had received, but it healed anyway, inch by inch, day by day. The palace changed around him. People who had refused to look at him now nodded in greeting. Nobles who had whispered insults now offered careful words of respect. Guards who had watched him with hatred now simply watched, their expressions neutral. He was not accepted, not truly, but he was no longer hated. High Advisor Bora still spoke against him at every opportunity, but his words carried less weight now. The Empress had made her decision, and no one dared challenge it directly. One evening, Prince Taivo came to see him. The prince stood in the doorway of Dohyun's room, his face unreadable. He was no longer wearing his warrior's armor. He looked almost ordinary. "I have thought about our duel," Taivo said. "Every day since it happened." Dohyun waited. "I was stronger than you, faster, better trained. By every measure, I should have won easily." Taivo paused. "But I have realized something. I was fighting to prove a point. You were fighting to survive. That is a different kind of battle. And in that kind of battle, I think your people will always win." He stepped forward. "I underestimated your kind. I will not make that mistake again." It was not an apology. Valanthi did not apologize. But it was an acknowledgement. Perhaps that was worth more. Taivo left without another word. When Dohyun was fully recovered, Yira came to him with a question. "What will you do now? You could leave. Take your ship and go back to your old life. No one would stop you." They were standing in the garden where Taivo had challenged him. The flowers glowed softly in the evening light. 3 moons were rising over the horizon. Dohyun thought about the question. He had spent years alone in the darkness, between stars. No home, no purpose, no future. Just survival day after day. "Your people do not want me here," he said. "Some of them do not," Yira agreed. "But some of them are starting to change their minds. And besides," she stepped closer to him, "I want you here. Is that not enough?" He looked at her, this strange, beautiful creature who had seen something in him when no one else had, who had stood beside him against her own family, who had cried for him when he was dying. "I do not know how to be what you need," he said. "I am just a soldier, a survivor. I do not understand your politics or your traditions or your world." "Then we will figure it out together." She took his hand. "Stay, please. Not because you owe me anything. Not because you have nowhere else to go. Stay because you want to." Dohyun was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "I will stay." Years passed. Dohyun became something no one expected. A bridge between two species. He traveled to human colonies carrying messages from the Valanthi Empire. He translated not just words but ideas, helping each side understand the other. It was slow work. Prejudice did not die easily, but bit by bit things changed. Trade routes opened. Diplomatic missions were established. The first human ambassador came to the throne world, and through it all, Ira was beside him. No longer just a princess, but a leader in her own right. She used her voice to argue for change, for understanding, for a future where humans and Valanthi could see each other as equals. When their children were born, the galaxy watched in wonder. The first human Valanthi hybrids in history. They had their mother's silver skin and their father's dark eyes. They were something entirely new, something that should not have been possible. Empress Nola held her grandchild for the first time on a quiet evening in the palace. She looked at the small creature in her arms, at the impossible mixing of two species, and then she looked at Do-hyun. "Do you understand what you started?" she asked. "The day you answered that distress signal?" Do-hyun thought about the burning ship, the dying princess, the simple choice to help someone who needed help. "No," he admitted, "but I am glad I did it anyway." The Empress smiled. It was a rare expression on her face, strange but not unpleasant. "So am I," she said. Outside the window, the stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, other humans were looking up at the same sky, maybe wondering if there was more to the universe than survival, maybe hoping for something better. Do-hyun had found his answer. In the end, it was simple. Help someone who needs help. That was enough. That was always enough.